Welcome to Green Money Matters, the podcast where your financial future meets the planet's well-being, bringing you the latest on climate issues and uncovering new and exciting investment opportunities that make a positive impact.
And I'm Chris Everett, your guide to sustainable investing, ESG funds, and all things green. Each week, we'll explore the intersection of money and sustainability, showing you how investing wisely can create a greener world and grow your money.
So get ready to invest with a conscience and join the growing movement of individuals who are reshaping the financial landscape. Welcome to Green Money Matters.
Hello and welcome to Green Money Matters. Today on the show, we have Don Weatherbee. Don is the CEO of Regenx, a company that uses clean technology to recover precious metals from, amongst other things, catalytic converters. Don has also been CFO of EnviroLeach Technologies and formerly the Chief Business Officer with KMC Mining, and has a background in accounting. Don, welcome to today's show. Do tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be with Regenx and what you do.
Sure thing. So, like you said, my background's accounting, financing. Out of school, I joined a coal mining company. Didn't even realize that coal was still being mined, really, but started in that and started a career in mining and moved from coal to oil sands up in northern Alberta, Canada, in financing and really computer type roles, and decided to make a little bit of change and move to a junior mining company, which is what Regenx used to be. And it was a junior miner that had properties in Spain and sort of was developing an iron ore asset and sold one of the assets down in Spain that it had and looked around and said, you know, the economics of just poking holes in the ground aren't delivering great returns for investors. And what could we do to sort of turn that on its head? And had an opportunity to get involved with, and the company bought a processing company that had an environmentally friendly processing technology that was looking at doing old gold tailings with a water recycling piece.
So what are gold tailings?
So in the days of an old gold mine, you run the material through your process and the waste rock goes into a tailings pile. But technology changes. And what was not recoverable 50, 60, 70 years ago is now able to get. So you could rerun these old tailings to get the gold that was missed the first time.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so we started down that path. And then because of that, started to get inquiries about what else we could process, which led us into an e-waste project and then into a catalytic converters. Davis Recycling, our partner, came to us and said, there's an opportunity in catalytic converters. Can you guys process it? And so in 2020, we started looking at it saying, yeah, this makes some sense. We can actually do this. So that's the long winding road of where we've got.
So I'm not a technical person, certainly definitely not as far as cars are concerned. Explain to us what catalytic converters are and they do, and what precious metals are in there, and how do you get them out?
Sure. So I'm not completely technical. I pretend to be a chemist now because I've done enough stuff that I begin to play one on TV. So the concept of a catalytic converter is that you flow your exhaust from your car through a honeycomb of material, and it oxidizes and takes out the particulates that you don't want, your sulfides, your nitrites, all those types of things, and sends out a cleaner air.
Okay.
To get that, to do that oxidizing reaction, the air has to flow over platinum or palladium. So these catalytic converters really is a container that has a honeycomb structure that is thinly coated with platinum and palladium that creates the reactions that you're looking for.
And these two metals are the precious metals, palladium, and how much palladium is in a single catalytic converter?
So that's the $1 million question. And the worst part is we can't answer it. So every single catalytic converter model is different, even different between years of cars. because the manufacturers are constantly looking at ways that they can make them more efficient. So the coatings change, they switch between platinum and palladium depending on price. They change what the superstructure looks like on how they can get more airflow over more structure, and in the size of engines, all determine different pieces. So each catalytic converter is its own unique microcosm.
So everyone you go into is potentially sort of a great source or little or nothing.
Yeah, so as a rough thumbnail, about 2 to 9 grams is where they come in.
And so Regenx, they take all these catalytic converters, and then what happens? How much do you need, and what makes it a viable financial entity?
So what we do is, like I said, we had a partner, Davis Recycling, who's a large recycling engine. And the vast majority of catalytic converters are recycled through smelters. They take them, they take out the metal, and they send the honeycomb into a furnace and melt it down. What we're specialized in is the diesel, which are built on a silicone honeycomb. And so that silicone carbide is a lot more robust of material. Diesel engines run hotter, so they have to have a honeycomb that can tolerate the higher temperatures. That factor, when you throw it into the smelter, causes operational issues for them. And they've got to run different temperatures. If they don't mix it right, it causes hot spots to that. So the smelters don't want that type of converter. So that's where we came in, that there was an opportunity in a niche for this segment of the market for an alternative recycling source. And so those diesel catalytic converters come into our partner. They ground down that honeycomb into a fine powder and send it to us. And we put it through our process, and we strip the precious metal off the substrate, recover that precious metal, and turn it into what's called a dirty concentrate. That's a high value precious metal that we send to a refinery who makes it pure metal and sells it into the market.
That's great. And obviously, you've had to build a processing unit, a factory. What sort of scale are you processing these at?
So we built and have operational the first module of our plant. And so this module has a capacity of 5,000 pounds of feedstock a day. So we're running a pretty significant operation. And the plan is to go from 1 module to 4 modules in our current facility, which would have about 10 tons of material processing a day.
Are you the only people doing this then, Don?
So there's 27 million catalytic converters scrapped every year.
Globally.
Yeah. So it's a large scale piece. And right now, only 35%, in 2023, only 35% of the use of PGMs was done through recycling.
And the rest was just going landfill? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. So your partner or partners process the catalytic converters, you get a substance which then you process and then you turn effectively into precious metal or near precious metal. So it's palladium and platinum. And what purposes are these precious metals used for themselves?
Majority of palladium goes back into autocatalysts, catalytic converters. That's the primary use of it. Platinum has a little more diverse. The majority is catalytic converters, but there's also, from the auto side, there's industrial too, because catalytic converters aren't just on your vehicles. They're on a lot of the industrial plants. Pretty much anything with a smokestack nowadays has a catalytic converter in its process.
Excellent. So you've certainly got a market for it.
The question on electrification, catalytic converters are going to go away. Yes and no. Hybrid vehicles still need catalytic converters. Electrification, diesels aren't just your on-road. It's also all generators, off-highway trucks, what we call the yellow iron, all those things that you see doing construction and mining and all that, all also have catalytic converters on them. So there's a large piece that an electrification isn't going to happen as quickly as most people hope. You just see some of the things where infrastructure demands are causing some delays in uptake in that.
Just sincerely impressive, Don. Now, I can't imagine that this has been without hurdles, though. I mean, what's the most difficult challenge you've faced in trying to scale a company that prioritizes sustainability?
Well, we're building one-of-a-kind, first-of-a-kind pieces. So there is no blueprint to follow. We may be using a lot of off-the-shelf components, but it is putting them together and making it all work is you're doing it all for the first time. So we've had ups and downs on where we thought we were right there, and then something new pops its head up. So I really have been impressed with our whole team on the ability to react to new items as they pop up, because we're in a constant learning environment where every day is either highly successful or highly frustrating.
Because every day is highly successful or a learning day.
I will admit, there's a frustrating side to the...
You're allowed to swear on learning days, I think. So how long did it take you to get from your light bulb moment to production line?
We like to crow about this a little bit because what we've done has been extremely fast when other people compare it. We started our first lab tests in 2020. So we were trying to build this lab scale testing during COVID. So we started in Vancouver. This started in 2020 with the lab testing. By two, we were doing a 25 kilogram pilot plant, which then we moved to Tennessee to be closer to our partner and supply. Yeah. And then in 2023, we started building this module one. Fairly rapid advancement. And yeah, you've taken this at somewhere between a fast jog and a sprint, I would say. Yeah. Now, I mean, a lot of us, struggle to make a difference in terms of our own sustainability efforts. Companies face those sort of challenges. What drives you to run a sustainable company? How sustainable is it? Is it your outcomes which are sustainable? Are the internal processes got an eye to green innovation? Tell us from that perspective. A little bit of all. Our primary sustainability is our outcome. It's about providing needed resources without digging more holes, because these pieces are going to be needed for all the future tech. The U.S. has called these ones critical minerals. So they've anointed that these are minerals that are needed for the future growth of the world. But there's only limited amounts in the ground. And to get the increasingly harder to reach ones are a lot more of a bigger environmental footprint. You have to dig bigger holes. You have to dig your holes in areas you don't want to dig, those types of things. So it's about being able to provide resources with what's already available and causing the minimal disruption. But internally, we've embraced the diversified, the decentralized model. We don't have an office. We're like a lot of the companies have gone to the home office environment because it's not needed. So your footprint can be smaller, your commutes are smaller, all those pieces. What's your personal motivation? Are you personally motivated by environmental responsibility, or was this a good opportunity which has positive, sustainable, environmental? I'm pragmatic. I'm not an eco warrior. I see the requirements of what we need. This was an opportunity that jumped in front of us, but I also have the mining background. So I know what's required to actually move forward with these items. Mining was always good to me. I'm not an anti-mining person. It's just we're getting to a size and problems where you need additional resources. You just can't rely on one piece of the pie to fix everything. Yeah, no, I get that. And I mean, you are effectively, like it or not, you are a green investor. Oh, and totally. Once we saw this opportunity, we saw the chance of moving ourselves into that space. And we embrace that label and that piece because we are an opportunity to be a green alternative and a sustainable alternative to other actions. Our listeners are motivated to be here and join us because they are very interested in being either direct green investors like yourself or investing in green sustainable opportunities. I'd love to hear your input on, especially given your accountancy background and your overall experience, what sort of indicators are you looking for
in terms of getting returns and opportunities and making those sort of decisions?
What we're looking at is there's a fundamental that we know is that we are going down the green, the sustainable piece and that. But we also understand that people are still looking for the economics of what you do. And you can't just label yourself green and say, oh, I should get a premium. You need to be still providing a service, a value that adds something and that gives a good return, because there's plenty of places for people to put money or buy from, and that you still have to be competitive and you have to have that drive to be competitive. And so you have to be looking at a company that's not just looking to say, I deserve a pat on the back because I'm green. It's, I deserve a pat on the back because I am maximizing a green opportunity. And that's what I look at is, are you actually going and pushing something to make it more economic and beneficial?
So with Regenx in particular, and I'm not asking you to divulge any company numbers or anything of that sort of nature, but what were your milestones and your trigger points, the questions you were asking when this opportunity arose for you?
So we looked at a couple different boxes. Technically, can we do this? Is it technically feasible? And do we have the ability to actually make this work? Then sort of going, okay, now what are the economics of it? Is this going to provide value? Is there an opportunity here that's moving forward? And that's where it was important, where we looked at the diesel silicon carbide, because it was an underserved niche, that it's a piece of the market that the biggest sector didn't want. So there's opportunity. Opportunity niches drive economics.
Right.
And that's how we looked at it and said, okay, technically we can do it. There's an opportunity here. It's a niche. It's underserved. So there's an economic value that you can derive from heading into that direction.
Yeah. Understood. And I mean, your profitability projections, are you at profitability stage yet? Is that something that's
we're close
in the near future?
In the near future. I have to watch how I say, because we're publicly traded, yes. But our profitability drives from us operating our first module at full capacity. And we're in that process. We're scaling up at this moment. So
fantastic. And how are you funded? How are Regenx funded? Was that part and parcel of your own investment? You obviously brought sort of partners in.
So we're publicly traded. And we've done investments, private placements. We've done what last funding round was what we call the rights offering here, where instead of doing more dilutive, we did a discount to our current shareholders who could buy in and avoid a dilution event. So we've been running lean. Like I said, that short time period where we did that on a very lean budget and just raising as we need, and didn't have a big pot of money to sit on as we were moving along. So we're a lean operation that's been funded by our investors in the marketplace.
For investors looking to put money into green companies, I mean, trust is key, where everything, resides on long-term impacts rather than necessarily immediate returns. So what advice would you give someone who is perhaps hesitant to invest in sustainable or sustainability ventures?
Well, I think looking at green opportunities is the same as any opportunity. Do you understand what their model is? Do you understand what they're trying to do? Do you understand how it's going to be monetized? Is there a market? Or is it just hopes and wishes? And how advanced is the technology? Is it still, your risk profiles change on it as it advances? We compare ourselves to others in the space. There's been lots of news, lots of things on people who are saying they're getting into the catalytic converter business, but they're all in the laboratory. We've got a production plant that we may have some hiccups or that sort of thing because it's first of kind, but we're not at a laboratory anymore. We've got an operation that's moving forward. So your risk profile is, where is your technology sitting at?
So you're the only operational precious metal extractor from catalytic converters
on the
operational
diesel. Yes,
on the diesels.
There are other recyclers doing smelting, but that's a large furnace capability, which has its own environmental footprint issue. But we're the only operational catalytic converter green clean tech.
Okay. And what does the future look like for you and Regenx? You're currently on Entity 1, Module 1. What's next?
The next is that we would take Module 1 and then we would expand to 4 modules in the current facility. Then we have opportunities. Well, do we have a second location in the US? Do we license worldwide? How do we expand that footprint? So
outside of North America, you would license or sort of franchise? Yeah.
That would be what our initial thought is. There are so many rules, regulations around going into new places. You're always better to have a local partner who understands what that is than trying to enter into new regulations, new languages, new customs. We're pragmatic. Like I said, I'm pragmatic on almost everything I do. What's the best ways to de-risk how you expand is what I think of first off.
This has been a fast process for you, although you came to the table with huge amounts of experience. What lessons have you particularly learned?
It's the small things that you unexpect. I'll put it this way. What we have is that in our process, we had a chemistry issue, a chemistry problem we needed to solve, and a physics problem we needed to solve. And the chemistry one, in all your testing, you can figure out chemistry because chemistry scale. Physics doesn't. And why I say that is the physics of what we're talking about is the movement of material between processes. And to do that, you have to have transfer pumps, X, Y. When you're in a smaller scale, you can never scale down the pump to the same capacity. You're always going to have overpowered pumping, and it's always going to move material easier than anything. Because if you think about just like a fish tank pump, it doesn't matter what's in the line, it's going to clear. When you go to a 1 foot diameter pipe, the pump capacity is all different, and it's not going to just push stuff through without any issue. So making sure you understand what happens in a lab isn't necessarily scalable on the physics side versus the chemical side.
And it sounds like you've bumped into those real life issues on more than one occasion.
Yeah. And the worst part is you can't know what you don't know until you're doing it. You can't know the pump is perfect until it's pushing your material, because all the literature is not your material. So even though somebody tells you it's going to work, you don't know until you turn it on.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And what is next for Don Weatherbee? Are you planning to, diversify into other operations, or do you imagine that this is an operation and an opportunity that is going to consume most of your, if not all of your time for the foreseeable?
This is going to consume us, probably for my career here is what this is going to consume, because with that expansion, just simply, we got 1 module to go to 4. That's quadrupling in size. So I've dealt in the past with explosive growth, but it's something you've got to manage, or it manages you.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I appreciate that. And Don Weatherbee, the CEO, the president, the CFO, you've seen opportunities, you've exercised your abilities and your contacts and your operational knowledge to put that into effect. Do you use the same principles in terms of your own private investment?
Yeah, I will admit I'm a little more hands-off in my private, more so giving it to professionals, because I've got enough on my time and the energy bandwidth, and so leaving it to some of the professionals for what I look at. But it's the same piece of what I hope they're looking at is what I judge them on what type of vehicles that they're using.
And talking about the future, many, if not all listeners to this podcast for Green Money Matters, environmental impacts play a bigger role. What effect and impact do you think Regenx is having? What contribution do you think you're making to this issue?
Well, we think we are diverting waste. We are encouraging more selectivity on what's being wasted downstream from us. We are providing the resources that will allow for continued use. I mean, one of the pieces that if people like us and other pieces like this don't get into the recycling side, some of the advances will become too expensive, because as the resources become scarcer, we then become worse and worse on what the trade-off is you want emission controls, but there's limited precious metal, so the pricing of that emission control would continue to increase. And then so it becomes, well, do we cut the corners? How do we do this? So without the ability to find additional resources, it endangers the ability to continue to finance, to fund opportunities to create better controls.
Don Weatherbee of Regenx, thank you very much for joining us today. Really enjoyed speaking with you and finding a little bit more out about such a fascinating industry.
Thanks a lot. Just give you one last piece, is that people are interested in us or our story. We do trade in Canada on the symbol RGX, and in the US as RGX TF.
And we'll place that information in the show notes, so any listeners today will be able to take advantage of the new technology around extracting precious metals from your exhaust pipes.
Thank you very much.
And so that was Don Weatherbee of Regenx. Don's insights were interesting. I mean, Don is by no means and by no measure an environmentalist. I mean, look, he's a concerned human being, that's clear. But above all else, in his own words, he's a pragmatist. He's very much about outcomes. And the outcome of what he is doing is that precious resources that would otherwise be lost are reused, recycled, or recycled and reused, and then given value again. And it's not a perfect operation, I'm sure. But in terms of, does it have a net positive outcome? Yeah, I think it does. It's perhaps to some extent part of what we like to refer to as the cyclical economy. This is going back to basics. Maybe this is about mending and repairing and reusing resources rather than extraction and exploitation. The consequences of what Don's operation at Regenx does mean that fewer resources are hauled out of the ground, that resources are able to be used again and again. In other words, the definition of recycling, that is a net positive. And I'm grateful to Don for sharing that sort of insights to us today. And that wraps up another episode of Green Money Matters. We hope you're feeling inspired to take your investments to new green heights. Remember, it's not just about the bottom line anymore. By aligning your investments with sustainable values, you have the power to shape a better future for generations to come.
If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe to Green Money Matters on your favorite podcast platform and never miss an opportunity to grow your wealth sustainably. Together, let's make money matter for the planet.
And don't forget to leave us a review. We really would love to hear your thoughts or ideas for future episodes. Drop me a line by email at chris@greenmoneymatters.com.
Stay tuned for our next exciting episode, where we'll explore groundbreaking investment opportunities and unveil the secrets of successful sustainable investors. Until then, remember, green money matters. Because investing in our planet's future is the smartest choice you can make. Thanks for joining us.